When we look back at the 19th and early 20th centuries, we see a world through a veil, a world rendered in sepia and silver, but more importantly, a world draped in a perpetual, spectral aspect. In the earliest photos of Paris or the American West, there's rarely perfect clarity. Instead, there's atmospheric. For decades, we dismissed the smoke, the swirling fogs of Victorian London, the gunpowder clouds of the Civil War, the steam of locomotives, as just artifacts, technical limitations, or pollution. But what if we look closer? What if the smoke in historical photography isn't just a byproduct, but a protagonist? To unravel this enigma is to understand the soul of early photography. It's a story of chemistry fighting the air, of artists capturing the ethereal, and of a hidden narrative of industrial might and human suffering, all obscured by a romantic blur. To understand the smoke, you have to understand the plate. In the 1840s, photography was slow, agonizing magic. The popular wet collodion process was hypersensitive to blue and ultraviolet light. This quirk meant the blue sky almost always blew out into a flat, white void. But the air below the sky, that was different. The air of the 19th century was thick. The Industrial Revolution was burning coal at a voracious rate. So when a photographer set up his heavy tripod on a London street, he wasn't just photographing a building, he was photographing the air itself. The tiny particles scattered the blue light that the film plate loved so much. The result was a paradox. The smoke we see is often an exaggeration of reality, a chemical reaction to the dense air. It softened the harsh edges of brick and steel, turning bustling, dirty cities into dreams. The chemistry of the time conspired with the pollution of the age to create a visual lie, that the past was softer and more mysterious than it truly was. The enigma takes a darker turn on the battlefields of the 1860s. The American Civil War was the first conflict exhaustively documented by the camera, but photography back then had a fatal flaw for combat exposure time. It took seconds, sometimes minutes, to take a picture. A charging soldier would be nothing but a blur. So, photographers waited for the aftermath. But even in the stillness after battle, the smoke persisted. Black powder weapons produced immense clouds of thick, white smoke that clung to the valleys. In many historical prints, the fog over a field like Antietam isn't morning mist. It's the lingering ghost of violence. This smoke served two purposes. Aesthetically, it created a somber, funereal atmosphere. But narratively, it acted as a censor. It obscured the gruesome details in the background, allowing the viewer to focus on a staged foreground, while the messy reality of the battlefield faded into a white, smoky oblivion. The smoke sanitized the war, turning slaughter into a solemn landscape. By the 1880s, smoke had shifted from a byproduct of war to a symbol of progress. A factory chimney belching black smoke wasn't an environmental hazard. It was a sign of economic power. Photographers were hired to capture the might of the Steel Age. But they faced a challenge: the sheer density of the smog. In Pittsburgh, known as Hell with the lid off, streetlights often burned at noon because the smoke blotted out the sun. Here, photographers began to manipulate the smoke. In the darkroom, they'd enhance the plumes rising from smokestacks, making them look even more majestic. The smoke became the architecture of the sky. But this grandeur hid a terrible truth. Down at street level, amidst that romantic haze, people were dying of respiratory failure. The camera captured the sublime silhouette of the factory, but it failed to capture the coughing children in the tenements below. The smoke acted as a curtain, dazzling the eye with industrial scale while choking out the human cost. As cameras moved indoors, a new type of smoke entered the frame: flash powder. Before the electric bulb, this volatile mixture of magnesium and potassium chlorate exploded with a blinding light and a massive puff of acrid smoke. Jacob Riis, the famous muckraker, used this flash to expose how the other half lives in the slums of New York. His images are stark and clear, but look closely at the edges of his indoor shots. There's often a haze. This is the smoke of the exposure itself. In capturing the image, the photographer polluted the very air of the room. The subjects were not only blinded by the light, but momentarily choked by the smoke of their own documentation. Here, the smoke represents the intrusion of the observer, the physical evidence that history was being recorded. At the turn of the 20th century, a rebellion occurred. A group of photographers known as the pictorialists, led by figures like Alfred Stieglitz and Edward Steichen, decided to stop fighting the smoke and instead embrace it. They argued that photography should evoke emotion, like a painting. They loved the fog, the rain, the steam, and the smog. They said soft focus lenses and textured papers to enhance the atmospheric haze. Steichen's famous image of the Flatiron Building is a prime example. The massive skyscraper is barely visible. The fog and mist are the primary subjects. The building is secondary. The smoke became a psychological state, a visual representation of the uncertainty and alienation of the new century. Today, we can use AI to dehaze these historical images, stripping away the layers to see the details hidden for 100 years. We can see the buttons on a coat, a sign on a distant shop. We gain data, but we lose the feeling. We lose the truth of what it felt like to stand in London in 1880, or on the field of Gettysburg. The smoke was real. It was breathed in by sanitizing the image to make it look like a crisp, modern photo. We might be committing a greater lie than the original photographers. The smoke in historical photography remains an enigma. It's part chemical accident, part pollution, part artistic choice. It obscures the past, wrapping it in a dreamlike quality that makes it feel safe and distant. But if we look beyond the frame, we realize that the smoke isn't just hiding the background. It is asterisk. The story, it tells us about the air they breathed, the industries that ruled them, and the artistic souls who tried to make sense of a rapidly changing world. The smoke is the ghost of the age, refusing to dissipate, reminding us that the past is never clearly defined. It will always be seen through a glass, darkly. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the past as fascinating as I did, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories hidden in plain sight.